All right, so today what we're going to be working on is plotting points on a coordinate plane, and then creating graphs and making sure we have all the essential information on our graphs that we need. So first, we're going to review graphing on a coordinate plane. So the place that you are going to plot your points, right, that's created by your x and your y axis, right, we call that the coordinate plane. That's what we got down here below. This whole entire thing here is a coordinate plane. So now we're going to go on to the next one here, the intersect into 4 quadrants. Right? These 4 areas in your graph, we call those quadrants. Quadrant 1 is in the top right, and then we go counterclockwise all the way around. So your quadrants kind of create the letter C if you think of it that way. Right? Quadrant 1 in the top right, 2 in the top left, and then 3 and 4 down below. So those are your quadrants. Now, when you're plotting your point, you're going to see something like this, 3, -2 in parentheses. That's called an ordered pair. In your ordered pair, the x-coordinate is listed first. So you're going to find where your x goes first, then where your y value is. So first your x, second your y, and you're always going to start at what we call the origin, which is 0.00, right in the middle of your graph. So you're going to start when you count right where that letter C is, right there. And we'll talk about how that looks here in a second. So just the last reminder before we plot a couple points, your x coordinates always go left and right. And your y coordinates are going to move up and down. So when you're plotting your points, you go left and right first, up and down second. So first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at these 4 points that are on here and try to figure out what spots they are at. So for letter A, you're going to start at 0, 0, and you're going to go left and right first. So we're going to go left until we hit -2. Right? Our point A is right above -2. So we know our x value is -2. That's our first one. And we're going to go up from -2 till we hit letter A and go over to see that the y value is 3. So our point is -2, 3. Make sure you have those parentheses around it, because if you write it just -2, 3, you're just listing a couple numbers. In order to make it an ordered pair, you got to have those parentheses around it. Now, what quadrant is point A in? It falls in quadrant 2. Point B. Point B, you go left over to -3. So our x value is -3. And we actually don't go up or down at all, so our y value is 0. If it falls on your x or y axis, it is not in a quadrant. So you can just put none. Now why don't you go ahead and try to find point C and D. Pause the video here, and then we'll check and see how you did. All right, so point C actually is right in the origin there. It doesn't move at all, so it's 0, 0, which would also be on your x and y, so it is not in a quadrant. And point D, you go over to 4 and down to -2. So our x was 4, and we went down to -2, which fell in quadrant 4. All right, so we talked about the quadrants already, so we're going to skip this slide here, and we're going to head down to our slide here on plotting points. Now we're taking the ordered pair that they give us, and we're plotting them on the coordinate plane. So point A, 3, 2. So remember, start at your origin, then you're going to count over to 3 on your x and go up 2 on your y. Because remember, our x goes first, our y is second. So point A is going to fall right there. Now point B, x is 3, y is 0, so we're going to go over to 3 again. But our y is 0, so we don't go up or down at all. Now these last two are a little tricky. C is negative 2.5, so we know it's gonna be a little bit further left than negative 2, and it's gonna fall right between negative 2 and negative 3, so kind of in that area there. And then our y is 4, so from there we're gonna go up until we hit 4, and that's gonna be point C right there. And our last one, point D is at 4.1 and negative 2, so our x is 4.1, so you go over to 4 and just a little bit past it, kind of right in here. And then we're going down to negative 2 on our y. So point D is right there. So hopefully the review of plotting points seems a little bit familiar to you. And we're going to use that in our next part here where we're going to create graphs. So if you slide down, this is the part right here that's going to be important for you to remember from today. There are 5 things that every graph you make needs to have, right? Absolutely needs to have. The first one is a title. This is going to be located usually on top of your graph. And it's going to have some sort of way of describing what the graph is showing, right? What your numbers represent. You know, number of cans sold or number of tickets bought, whatever it is. So usually on the top of the graph. So if you look down here, the 2 things that were measured were number of days and number of cans. So it could be number of cans collected, number of cans sold. We're going to go with number of cans sold. So right on top of our graph, we're going to put number of cans sold. It doesn't need to be super creative, just something that describes what you're measuring. The next thing is you need to put a label on your x-axis. The x-axis is your independent variable. And then you also need to put a label on your y-axis, right, which remember is the dependent variable. Now it says label, right? It's kind of like a name if you want to think of it that way. You're just telling us what you're measuring on each of those axes. So in this case, right, we have a vertical T-chart here. The left side is always the x. Right? X-axis, right? What it goes on the x-axis is always on the left side of your table. That will never change. Now if you have a table that's set up horizontally, days in cans, your x-axis will always be on top and your y-axis will always be on the bottom. That does not change. So x-axis is on the left, so number of days is what we're measuring on the x. So down here on the bottom, we're going to put our name of number of days. And on the y, we're measuring our number of cans. So I'm going to put number of cans over here on the y. All right, and the last 2 things you're going to need is you need to make a consistent scale on your x and your y. So the numbers you put on the side of your graph need to go up by the same amount every step, right? You can't go up by 1 and then 5, and it has to be consistent all the way across. However, your x and your y can have different intervals. So you can go up by different amounts on your x and your y. So we're going to go ahead and make our two scales here. For our x, we just have 0 to 4. So your 0, 0, 0 starts right here. And since we only have 4, if I put them on the first 4 lines here, remember, put your numbers on the lines. Right? Don't put them in the squares, put them on the lines. If I put them just there, that'd be a really small graph. Right? That'd be harder for us to analyze. So I'm going to skip 2 lines every time. 1, skip 2, put 2, skip 2, put 3, skip 2, put 4. Then our number of cans, we go all the way up to 198. Don't use that as your last number. You want to use a nice round number. So on my scale, I'm going to end at 200. And I'm going to count by, we'll count by 20s. So 20, 40, all the way up to 200. Now, it's important to note there isn't necessarily a right scale. If you would have picked 25s, that would have been okay. 10s would have been okay, just wouldn't have fit on the graph. And so whatever scale you choose, as long as it fits on the graph and takes up a good amount of your graph, that'll work okay. So now we have all 5 parts of our graph. The 5 things are your title. There we go. Your title, your label on your X and Y, and then appropriate scales. So now the only thing left to do is to plot our points. So first point is 0, 0. We're going to put that point right there on 0, 0. And the second one is 1, 12, so our X is 1, our Y is 12, so we're going to zoom in here. So our X is 1, and then we don't have a line for 12. So we're going to have to estimate it's somewhere between 0 and 20. So it's not going to be an exact point there, but we're going to estimate it. Now, the next point, 240, I'm going to have you go ahead and try to plot those next 3, and then we'll see how you did. All right, so hopefully you paused and tried those last 3. Your point should be about there, 240. 3, it went all the way up to 110, so somewhere between 100 and 120. See, mine ended up a little higher, that's okay. And then 4, 198. So your graph should look something like that. Now we're going to ignore the final question. We will talk about that more next week in class. But those are the 5 things you need for your graph. You need a title, label on the X and Y, appropriate scales, and then make sure you plot your points. On your assignment, do not connect your points on your graphs with a line. Do not connect them. So you're going to go ahead, you're going to make 3 graphs on your homework. If you have questions, let me know. I'd be happy to help out.